For over 100 years, filmmakers relied on in-camera techniques such as rear screen projection, front screen projection, and other more complex methods to merge pre-recorded material with on-set photography. There were several advantages to shooting this way. The footage was captured at the same time as principal photography, actors and key craftspeople could work in context, and dailies contained all the elements that comprised a complete shot. And while all of these aspects are clear advantages, there were also drawbacks, most notably in regards to shooting limitations and image fidelity. Due to these challenges, many filmmakers transitioned from using projection techniques to blue and green screen photography, which allows for more camera freedom and higher quality imagery, but comes at the expense of not shooting the full scene on set and leaving the final composite to post-production. Today, the tradition of in-camera work has come full circle and evolved into the dynamic and expansive world of virtual production. With increased computing power, projection innovations, and recent technological breakthroughs, a new suite of tools have emerged that allow filmmakers to combine live-action footage and computer graphics in real time. With these dramatically improved in-camera techniques, creatives can, once again, visualize their projects, direct the content, and make informed decisions in context. We all benefit from these advances as they allow us to put storytelling back in the hands of filmmakers earlier in the production process, thereby accelerating the ability to establish the overall visual language of the film across disciplines. There are a number of different ways this technology is utilized. Hence, our program is designed to give you a brief overview of the various forms of virtual production, demonstrate some of the most current practices, and share insights from a variety of branch members that we hope will inspire you to explore these new production methods as a means to expand your own creative capabilities. To join me as part of today's show, I'd like to welcome Ben Grossman, the CEO of Magnopus and one of the key people in the industry who has been working in the virtual production space for over a decade.
Thank you, Deborah. So for the last century, we've primarily worked in the physical world. Movie sets were the place to be if you wanted to know what the movie would look like. And there was no more important vantage point on a movie set than through the camera. Production used to be the place where we created, and post-production was where we edited and refined what we'd created. But when computer graphics became a filmmaker's tool, it came with a curse. We couldn't just create things digitally fast enough to include them in production, which gave birth to the phrase, "We'll add that in post."
What did it cost?
Everything.
Now, we might think of them better as physical production and digital production. A physical production often focuses on one single shot at a time, working in seconds, minutes, and occasionally hours. Conversely, digital production, or visual effects, might work on thousands of shots at the same time, for days, for months, for even years. Now, the resulting two groups of people have been separated by a calendar, making it even harder to create a consistent vision throughout the filmmaking process. How do we bridge that gap? Well, we're going to need to borrow an important piece of technology from our entertainment industry siblings, the games industry. Which brings us to the term virtual production. Now, we use physical filmmaking equipment, actors, sets, even locations, with digital augmentation at the same time. Virtual production is the combination of the best of physical and digital production. So to talk more about how we meet in the middle, I'd like to welcome a film and game industry veteran and the Chief Technology Officer of Epic Games, Kim Libreri. Take it away, Kim.
Computer graphics in feature films has been around since the early 1970s. In those early days, the work was severely limited by rendering times and the ability for artists to iterate on what they were creating. While computer graphics brought exciting possibilities, meager computing power limited how fast their vision could be realized. In the early 1990s, CGI started to become an important part of the movie industry. At that time, the computer of choice was the Silicon Graphics Workstation. These workstations enabled pre-rendered content to be incorporated into films such as Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park. As the visual standards and complexities increased, so did render times. Individual frames could take hours, if not days, to be rendered. And in my embarrassing case, one frame took 144 hours to complete. I won't tell you which movie. While this was happening in the feature film realm, the same type of hardware was driving innovation in a completely different industry: video games. The Nintendo 64, the first mass-market console, offered many players their introduction to 3D gaming. It was a direct descendant of the Silicon Graphics workstations. But even though computer graphics in movies and video games shared many creative and technical inspirations, they stayed mostly on separate paths. However, film directors like Stanley Kubrick, the Wachowskis, James Cameron, and George Lucas were among the first to embrace what would eventually be known as CG pre-visualization. My personal experience with early real-time visualization was in 1997, as we were planning the bullet time sequences on the first Matrix. In 2000, ILM used the first version of Unreal Engine to visualize the Rouge City for Steven Spielberg's film AI. During shooting, they were able to compose blue screen shots of this virtual environment by combining the BBC's camera tracking system with an SG Ionix-powered system called Brainstorm. This was the first use of real-time CGI, a simulcam, merging live action with CG elements on set to aid in framing and lighting during principal photography. Today, we call this virtual production. For the next decade, the film and games industries continued on their own paths, with fairly limited crossover. But things began to change as game graphics started to look more and more realistic. In 2002, Bob Zemeckis and his team at Sony Pictures Imageworks were early adopters of virtual production techniques, using Kadara's Filmbox, soon to become Autodesk's Motion Builder, to support a motion capture production, the Polar Express. Following closely behind, in 2005, James Cameron and his Lightstorm Entertainment team built upon this technology to create a directable, interactive scene that resembled a video game. This became the methodology for Avatar. Meanwhile, Jon Favreau and his team were pioneering virtual production techniques leveraging Unity's game engine for the 2016 Jungle Book and then later for The Lion King. This allowed them to use traditional filmmaking techniques like dollies, cranes, and camera heads inside a virtual world, a further integration of filmmaking and gaming tools. These virtual production techniques came into sharp focus in prep for the first season of The Mandalorian, as Jon Favreau assembled teams from ILM, Magnopus, Profile, and Epic Games to further advance the state of the art. With this, game engine technology has become central to bringing creative control back into the hands of filmmakers, and we're only just getting started.